Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine live recruiting show. Even though we're not live, this will be the last week we do these premieres. We'll be back on our normal schedule next week. So after Memorial Day, we'll be doing the live show with me and Zach on Tuesday, and we will be doing the Q&A with myself on Wednesday as we head into official visit season. Again, apologies that we haven't had our normal live recruiting shows. I've been on the road seeing recruits the last couple of weeks. Zach was on vacation during a week-long bachelor's party in which he somehow survived. So that is why we haven't been on our normal schedule. But make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll be back with the normal schedule next week. But we're going to be breaking down some guys that have set official visits here recently since we last did our premiere. The biggest of them all is five-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalolo, which is a recruit that you, Zach, have been following closely. So why don't you tell us the latest on Babalolo?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, a five-star recruit according to the Andrews 3 industry ranking, a top 5 offensive tackle, number 1 in Kansas, top 15 nationally across all positions. This is a kid who we have covered in depth in terms of just having connections, not just to the Michigan program, but to the state, really. This is a kid who is currently living in suburban Kansas City, but was actually born in Bloomfield Township, which was 45 minutes north of Ann Arbor. When you're talking about the connections with his current state of Kansas, I mean, he resides in the same state that head coach Sherrell Moore grew up in. And that's where the relationship first started in the fall. And, that's when the offer was issued. And then a few months later, Michigan was able to grab this prospect up to campus for an unofficial visit in late March for spring camp practice. When that happened, I think that really set the wheels in motion in terms of giving Michigan a more in-depth look. He was there overnight for the first visit, but getting that weekend to really understand the offensive line development that's led to 2 Joe Moore awards is going to be monumental. Allowing Babalolo to get more time with Grant Newsome, offensive line coach, who was just there at Babalolo's school with offensive coordinator Kirk Campbell last week. But yeah, just getting more time with the coaching staff, allowing him to get more acclimated to Ann Arbor and just being around the team, I think is going to be important. And, when you look at where he could fit on the offensive line, I mean, this is a true offensive tackle this year. This is a true future anchor for any program that lands him. And when you look at the rest of the offensive line targets that Michigan is circling in on, I mean, when you look at some of them, most of them are projected interiors. Currently, right now, Michigan has one offensive line commit in Avery Gash, a 4-star, and more than likely he's going to slide inside to the next level. So if you can land a guy who can solidify the left or right spot for multiple years, this is huge, and especially for a kid who kind of, when you talk to him, you can definitely feel like he fits that mold of what Michigan is kind of instilling in terms of their culture, in terms of a team first kind of guy, a leader kind of guy, a guy who understands what it means to play for a top offensive line unit and be the leader of it. So, it's huge to get him on campus. And, there's, there's the competition, obviously entails teams like Oklahoma is going to get that June 21st visit. But I think throughout this offseason, we've kind of said, Michigan is able to land top tier offensive linemen because of what they've done in the past. And offensive linemen want to play for a team where schools champion offensive linemen, where they're seen more than just when they make mistakes, right? So overall, I think getting the official visit is huge. I feel like that was expected to begin with as well. But overall, this is a really solid weekend when he does come to really solidify the fact that they are the leaders, and this Michigan is a home for a kid like him.
Yeah, so Babalolo, not the only profile offensive lineman to set an official visit. Hardy Watts, on 300 offensive lineman out of New England, is coming in on June 21st, which is Victor's weekend. Huge for Michigan to set that OV with Watts, and the Wolverines are now trending for Watts on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. This is a kid that visited Michigan in the spring and was blown away with the culture, the academics, and just the development of the offensive line. Michigan historically has done well recruiting high character kids out of New England. You talk about guys like Zach Zinter and Kalel Mullings that have turned into not just good players at Michigan, but also really good ambassadors for the program. So I think that Michigan is still capable of, Don Brown's long gone, but Michigan's still capable of landing that cream of the crop from New England. And Hardy Watts is certainly that. This cycle, he's ranked as the #1 overall recruit in the state of Massachusetts by On3. Grant Newsome also recently visited him at his high school. In fact, Newsome went straight from seeing Watts to seeing Babalola last week. But Watts is a big target on the interior of the offensive line. They've talked to him about being a guy that can flex to tackle if needed as well. But I think Michigan is right up there with the likes of Penn State and Clemson, Alabama, and a few others. And even more offensive linemen have set their official visit. Zach, I'll kick it back to you because the trio out of Bishop Gorman are coming in. They have all locked in official visits. So quickly take us through the names that Michigan fans need to know at National Powerhouse Bishop Gorman.
Well, there's 3, as you mentioned. All of them are ranked 4 stars according to the industry ranking. The top one is Douglas Utu, number 48 overall nationally, number 3 interior offensive lineman. He has had his offer for over 2 years. His first visit came in late March when he was able to watch spring camp practice alongside other top targets like Michael Carroll and the aforementioned Hardy Watts. He's known Sherrone Moore for just as long as he has the offer. During that visit earlier this spring, the family was able to build more of a in-person bond. I mean, obviously Moore has been to Bishop Gorman quite a handful of times for visits, but getting them on campus and just, seeing what a kid like him, who's based out of the West Coast, comes to the Midwest and really gets that development, that proper development with Moore and Newsome at the helm. I think that's really impressive family. Getting all of them too, along with Utu, I feel like that only helps. But I wouldn't say that, if you get one, you're going to get the rest. But if you get, obviously landing one is great. But, in terms of Utu, I mean, this is a kid who probably may not, I don't think the recruiting process is something that he loves, right? So if you're able to get that official visit weekend, have it perfect, everything goes to plan, you show him the plan and the family the plan of what to expect in Ann Arbor on and off the field, I think you got a really good chance. There's obviously other contenders like Alabama, USC, Nebraska, Washington. But I think it'll be very interesting. I think the rest of his teammates too aren't really like, I don't know. It's the right word to put it. It's sort of like if they get the recruiting process done as quickly as possible, I think they're fine with that, right? And I think this official visit will really give them an idea of what to expect. Along with Utu, you got others like S.J. Alafatuli, a projected interior type, another top 100 kid, number 67 overall. He visited for the Ohio State game in late November. He is able to garner as close of a relationship with Grant Newsome over the phone as he has with Sherrone Moore, because he's had that offer for multiple years, just like Utu. Seeing that Ohio State game really kind of gave him a glimpse of, this is where you could be playing in the next 4 years. These big time games with millions of people watching. That Ohio State game, I think, really put in perspective of, you play for a school like Bishop Gorman, number 1 overall high school program in the country, and then you go to Michigan, the college football playoff winners. That's the operations that they experience in high school kind of mirrors what they might expect in college if they go enroll in Ann Arbor. And I think someone like S.J. Alafatuli, who I think is one of the best interior offensive linemen in the country, just a raw, powerful mauler in the On3 industry, ranking reflects that. He'll be there on June 7th, and Utu will be there next weekend on May 31st. And then the final one is Kalani Ovalu, another projected interior type, a 4-star. Again, he was one of those kids who went to the Ohio State game. He and Alpha Fatuli, along with teammate Micah Kapana, they all went there for the game. But yeah, Kalani Ovalu, I think he's really been impressed with what he's heard from Grant Newsom over the phone. Obviously, Sharon Moore has been an active presence throughout the time that Kalani Ovalu has had his offer, which dates back to when he went to his old high school out in Utah. So the relationship has gone, can date back a few years. But he will be there June 14th, the final one. But again, even though they're not going to be there on the same weekend, I think Michigan has a solid chance in ultimately landing at least one. If you want to get all three, I think there's a scenario in which that could happen. But overall, I think all three, they just mesh well together. They have great chemistry, and they play on the offensive line that's, as I said, ranked number one in the country. So overall, I think Michigan getting all three in there for one last look before they commit is huge.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of offensive linemen coming in, Michigan in a good spot on the on-3 recruiting prediction machine with, a number of the targets that we talked about. You want some running backs to come in behind them, and a couple of running backs have set official visits. So very quickly, you have 3-star prospects, Todd Robinson and Jasper Parker coming in. Todd Robinson out of Georgia will be on campus June 21st. So for that Victor's Weekend, Georgia is considered the heavy favorite there. He has been a late riser. So even though he's a 3-star prospect, I don't expect him to remain that very long. I think he'll rise into probably the top 200, to be completely honest. He's a really versatile athlete that can also play on the defensive side of the ball. In fact, some schools like Alabama and LSU want him on defense, Michigan prioritizing him as a running back. We'll see if the Wolverines can, make something shake on that last OV. Jasper Parker is a kid that they've wanted for a long time. Even before Tony Alford was hired on staff, Ron Bellamy personally extended an offer to Parker. They actually attended the same high school, or Parker still attends. Ron Bellamy is a product of Archbishop Shaw in New Orleans. Michigan now has the lead on the on-3 recruiting prediction machine. I think that that Bellamy connection helps a lot. And Tony Alford has prioritized Jasper Parker over a guy like Iverson Howard, who was set to come in for an OV and is no longer being brought in. That's because, they feel like they're doing really, really well with Jasper Parker. So he could very well be one of the backs in this class if the official goes well. And so he's coming in the weekend before Robinson on June 14th. So those two backs coming in. And lastly, we'll hit on the defensive side of the ball with Jordan Young, top 100 safety out of North Carolina, has replaced Tennessee with Michigan for June 21st. So big news there, as Michigan now appears to be a true contender in the race for Jordan Young. Those 4 schools on the on-3 recruiting prediction machine, Clemson, NC State, Florida State, and Michigan, are probably the 4 schools at the top of his list. Those are the 4 schools receiving OVs. Texas A&M is hanging around and might make a push going into the fall, because Young has said he's not making a decision until October. But right now, Lamar Morgan and Wink Martindale have pushed Michigan into that top group. I think they're probably 3rd or 4th in that group right now, but the official visit could certainly change things. He sees, one of the elite defensive backs in the country, ranked in the top 100 per the On3 industry ranking. And that actually reminded me that Kamar Archie is now set to make an OV. I think we mentioned on the last show that he had not scheduled a Michigan official visit yet. Like Jordan Young, he has replaced Tennessee with Michigan for the June 21st weekend. So Michigan appears to be trending back in the right direction for Archie, who is one of the top linebackers in the country. All right, let's go ahead and flip the script and talk about flip targets. So Michigan is working hard to steal a few commitments away from other schools. Lamar Morgan, Michigan's new secondary coach, who we just hit on, was actually on the road out west and made an offer in Arizona to Jamar Beal Goins out of Desert Edge, and he's currently committed to Texas A&M. So, kind of difficult to flip guys away from A&M considering their NIL prowess. Zach, do you feel like Michigan has a legitimate shot here?
We'll see. Right. But I think you hit the nail in the coffin in terms of just NIL. Texas A&M is a big player. They are able to recruit states like Arizona really well. The opportunities, I guess, that you can establish yourself as a brand on and off the field for Texas A&M, I feel like is at a different is on a different level than Michigan. But credit to Lamar Morgan for going out to arguably the biggest powerhouse in the Phoenix area and Desert Edge. They produce talent annually, and this is a school that Michigan fans should know of because they were in on Kansas signee Deshaun Warner last season, who came from that school. So a lot of talent comes from that area, but I think what you've seen from Lamar Morgan as a recruiter, the ability to land a litany of transfers. I think he's going after the best of the best on the recruiting trail, and if that means trying to flip targets from schools like Texas A&M, he has no problems in making that effort. So we'll see what happens.
So apologies for my phone going off. I forgot to turn it off silent, but it was actually Carter Smith's dad who let me know that Carter Smith in his spring game, the first quarter of his spring games, when Florida, they play against each other. They have real spring games against another team. So Bishop Verot, Carter's team, is playing Columbus out of Miami. First quarter, Carter Smith, 7 carries, 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. So how about that? So again, apologies for my phone going off. But yeah, there's some other targets, flip targets for Lamar Morgan as well. One is Alex Graham, 4-star cornerback out of IMG Academy by way of Detroit. Now, I had a chance to go out to IMG Academy and I met with Alex last week. He kind of gave a surprise commitment to Colorado earlier this offseason. Before I talk about him, Zach, Alex is a kid you knew well. Obviously, again, he was a local kid. Where do you put Michigan's chances of potentially flipping him?
If he's going to end up flipping, it's going to be Michigan. I mean, 9 unofficial visits. As you mentioned, he's from the Detroit area. His mom graduated from the school. There was obviously talks of, obviously, I think Deion Sanders and the opportunities that Colorado presents obviously gave him the ultimatum to commit. And I think if there's any school that was able to pry him away from Boulder, I think it's Michigan, just based on with the job that program has done with him in the past.
Yeah, I do agree. I think if Graham flips anywhere, it's going to be Michigan, with his mother having attended Michigan and being a legacy, with him being to campus, a ton of times. I just think Michigan makes a lot of sense. Colorado kind of just has the flashing lights and the NIL and Deion Sanders. Alex is a corner, so the opportunity to play for one of the best cornerbacks of all time is certainly appealing. But at the end of the day, Michigan is the superior program. The development is obviously there. I think he just needs to develop a better relationship with Lamar Morgan. And if Michigan makes a hard press to indeed flip him this fall, because Alex does have some injury concerns he has to get over. But if Michigan presses hard to flip him away from Colorado, then I do think that'll certainly be a possibility. Now, there's another highly touted corner that Lamar Morgan is working on, and that is Shamari Earls out of the great state of Virginia, and he is currently committed to South Carolina. He's a top 100 recruit on On3. And man, I was extremely impressed with Earls yesterday. I had a chance to go out and watch him practice, and very similar skill set as Will Johnson. He's listed at 6'1", 175, which is completely wrong. He is 6'2", 200 pounds. I mean, he completely passed the EJ height test, and he looks a legit 200 pounds. So from a physical build standpoint, again, very similar to Will. He's also a guy that runs a 10.6 100 meter. He is absolutely flying. So that rare combination of size, speed, and length is certainly there with Earls. I think that, you know, he committed to South Carolina early, had great relationships there. It was a school he felt comfortable with, but now that he's continuing to gain interest from some more major programs, he's leaving that door open. He actually told me that Michigan and Georgia were the two big schools that he definitely wants to make OVs to. He hasn't scheduled one with Michigan yet, but things are progressing well there. Lamar Morgan was actually in Virginia earlier this week, a few days before I made my stop there, and met with Earls and his father. And I do think Michigan will, at the very least, get him to campus and have a shot there. Last flip target we'll talk about is on 300 Miami linebacker commit Elijah Melendez out of the Orlando area by way of Gary, Indiana. Yeah, Melendez is originally a Midwest kid. He kind of fits that Michigan culture. You know, he already is familiar with guys on the team like Kenneth Grant, who is also from the Gary area. He loves the development. He loves the scheme. Both Brian Jean Mary and Wink Martindale went out to Florida last week and met with Melendez. Things went extremely well. Michigan checks literally every single box for Melendez. The problem here is NIL. Obviously, Miami does NIL a lot different than Michigan and others. You know, that's a complete different ball game. I think if Michigan can figure out some type of NIL plan on the recruiting trail, and you've seen a plan kind of work out in terms of roster management, keeping guys that may have had some offers from other schools that are currently on the roster. You've seen it in the transfer portal. Lamar Morgan was able to land a handful of defensive backs this month. So why not on the recruiting trail? You know, if Michigan is able to formulate some type of NIL strategy this summer, I do think they will have a legitimate shot to flip Melendez. Like with Alex Graham, I think if a school is going to flip Melendez away from Miami, it's Michigan, but I would love to see them have an NIL strategy in place for recruiting in order for that to happen. You know, it's tough to pass up an opportunity like Miami provides. So we'll see how this recruitment turns out. Look, Melendez is an early enrollee, but he's already committed. He's taking his time with the process. He told me he's not going to completely shut down his recruitment until December. Same with Shamari Earls, also an early enrollee. Both of these guys don't plan to shut down their recruitments completely until December. So it gives Michigan plenty of time to continue to work on these flip targets. All right. So that is our show today. We are going to be back on that normal schedule, like I mentioned at the top. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also subscribe to the Wolverine.com. Zach, do you have the code handy?
UM1.
Yes, it is. But is it -1 or is it just 1?
Let me look.
Well, we'll give you the code in a second, but you do get 2 months for $1, I believe is the offer. So 2 months for $1, and that gets you insider recruiting information, team information, portal information, and so much more. And you're going to want to take advantage of the Wolverine.com as we head into official visits. We'll have a lot of in-depth information on how things are going with all the recruits set to make official visits this summer. Zach, do you have the code?
Yes, it is no dash. U of M1.
UM1. Oh, look at that. Even a graphic. Look at Zach coming through with that. So shout out to him, and make sure to subscribe to the Wolverine.com today. $1 for 2 months. Use the code UM1. We will see you guys next week. Enjoy the holiday weekend.